thinking represents higher levels of thought that are reflective and imaginative. It refers to judging in a reflective way what to do or what to believe. Critical thinking involves critical examination of a statement by examining its assumptions, the accuracy of supportive evidence, and logical reasoning in reaching conclusions. Critical thinking is an important theme because, according to Yang, asking thoughtful questions plays an important role in inducing students' higher-level cognitive processes, such as self-reflection, revision, social negotiation, and conceptual change of student misconceptions, all of which are integral to critical thinking. Ten sources were selected from 7 peer-reviewed educational technology journals and included an electronic medium. The analysis only included sources with the words critical thinking as part of the title. To figure as part of the analysis, the journal sources had to include research participants. The studies selected ranged from 2002 to 2010. Recent studies were chosen because educational technology is consistently changing and developing. The studies were conducted in Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, and the United States. 9 of the studies used university students as participants. These students came from a variety of educational dispositions, which included veterinary, business, education, medical, and professional English studies. One of the studies used participants in secondary school aged 13 to 14. 9 of the studies used both male and female participants, while the study of secondary school students used only male participants. Sample sizes ranged from as few as 16 students to as many as 480 students. All of the studies except one utilized online discussion and the analysis of the postings from these discussions. The other study used a web-based tutorial program and analyzed its effects. 5 of the studies used a quantitative design method and 2 studies used qualitative design. 1 used quasi-experimental design and 1 used a mixed method approach. The 4 themes that emerged from the findings of the 10 studies included tools for online learning, student attitudes towards online learning, teaching strategies to promote critical thinking in online discussions, and the effectiveness of critical thinking in online discussions. Three of the studies examined the effectiveness of specific tools to teach critical thinking in online learning. The study of the effects of an online learning tool entitled The Virtual Exchange found that students reacted positively to the process of taking on character roles and discussing topics through the lens of these roles. Higher levels of critical thinking were reported from instructors. Kumta assessed medical students' performance levels after using a specially developed web-based tutorial program to promote critical thinking. Students in the study group demonstrated critical thinking better than students in the control group because they devoted more time for self-study on clinical patients. Bruning assessed the effectiveness of the Create a Problem approach in promoting and developing critical thinking skills. She found the program effectively increased students' levels of critical thinking by promoting their analytical and problem-solving skills. By creating their own problems and evaluating responses, students are thinking critically and self-directing their learning. Richardson used 3 different instructional strategies during his study of online discussion. These included case-based discussion, debate, and open-ended discussion. Overall, 47% of students preferred open-ended discussion, 36% preferred debate, and 17% preferred case-based discussion. Students expressed several reasons for the preference of the open-ended discussion. These included more freedom to express opinions, no right or wrong answers, fewer restrictions, higher levels of creative thought, and ability to understand the material. Two studies examined the effects of Socratic questioning training on critical thinking in online discussions. Participants of the studies received varying levels of training. Students who received the most training had higher levels of critical thinking skills than those students who received only some training. It was also noted that professors should teach Socratic questioning skills at the beginning of a course so students may be more engaged and motivated to participate. There is a distinct correlation between the level of teacher support and the levels of critical thinking expressed by students. Higher levels of critical thinking were expressed from students when they had this skill modeled explicitly and when they felt encouragement from the instructor to express themselves and interact with other students in a meaningful way. Two of the studies included research on student attitudes towards online discussion as a tool for learning. 92% of participants agreed that they had to think more in an online discussion environment, and 84% felt that they learned more from the online discussion. Students liked practicing problem-solving skills and interacting with other students. Yang and Chu noted the relationship between levels of critical thinking skills and levels of critical thinking disposition. They found that increased teaching of critical thinking skills resulted in higher levels of critical thinking disposition. Richardson and Bruning found that students had positive reactions to critical thinking exercises in online discussions and web-based learning. Richardson noted that when students were asked to use a 5-point scale to rank their comfort level with using online discussions, they had a slightly higher than moderate comfort level. Bruning found that students reacted positively to the use of an online question exchange called Create a Problem. Students reported that the critical thinking exercises better prepared them for any real-world scenarios they will likely face. Nine studies yielded consistent results in terms of the positive effects of teaching critical thinking through online discussions. In each of these studies, students who were exposed to a web-based program, such as the Virtual Exchange, Create a Problem, or a tutorial program, all demonstrated higher levels of critical thinking and increased performance. According to Chong and Chung, students did not demonstrate in-depth critical thinking in the online discussion forum. A variety of reasons were offered for the students' lack of critical thinking, which included lack of student understanding, research, discipline, experience, or motivation. Students demonstrated positive dispositions toward critical thinking in online discussions. Students enjoyed applying their learning to real-world scenarios. Online critical thinking activities enabled the students to deepen their understanding of real-world situations and provided them with confidence to tackle these problems. By participating in critical thinking exercises, such as virtual scenarios presented through web-based tutorial programs, students gained confidence to participate in more real-world situations. Higher-level thinking skills such as analysis, evaluation, and application are fostered through the process of critical thinking exercises. It is not enough for instructors to use the internet to merely post information. To engage students to think critically requires a time commitment from instructors to develop questioning techniques and resources to maintain student interest. Students have positive views toward critical thinking activities in online discussions and feel they are thinking more and benefiting from the process of critical thinking. Students think web-based critical thinking activities will help them in real-world situations. Online discussions are an effective way to foster students' critical thinking skills and have the capacity to be more effective than traditional face-to-face methods. Critical thinking skills need to be explicitly taught, and it is best if these skills are taught at the beginning of a course. Instructors need to play an active role in promoting critical thinking in online discussions. They should develop questioning techniques that will allow their students to think critically and become good questioners themselves. Bruning noted that instructors should continue allowing student feedback in regards to teaching tools promoting critical thinking. She also notes that the Create a Problem tool could be used in face-to-face classroom settings as well. In terms of using the Virtual Exchange, Thompson, Martin, Richardson, Branson suggest implementing the teaching tool in classroom-based settings and comparing its effectiveness with the online setting. They also suggest determining levels of critical thinking skills through pre- and post-tests. An active relationship between students and instructors is required to foster effective critical thinking skills and disposition. Instructors should provide formative feedback for students and should model proper critical thinking techniques at the beginning of a course. One possible limitation of 3 of the studies is the reliability of the sample size. The Yang, Newby, and Bill study used only 16 participants. The Jiang study used 34, and the Chiang and Chung study used 35 participants. The generalizability of the research is another limitation. All of the studies, except the Chiang and Chung study, used participants that were in graduate or undergraduate university courses, so the results may not be generalized to elementary or secondary students. The Chiang and Chung study used only male participants, which could limit the results. The other 9 studies used both female and male participants. The 10 studies were chosen from a specific list of 40 educational journals. More studies could have been included to obtain a better analysis.